So, yeah, thank you, Seth. Okay, and I'll start. Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12, 2020 has been extended till April 22nd, 2020. This meeting will be recorded by Scituate Community Television and can be viewed on Scituate Community Television Facebook Live. The recorded meeting will be available the following day on Comcast Channel 9 and YouTube Scituate Community Television. And I am gonna call the meeting to order, the Tuesday, December 14th, 2021 Shellfish Advisory Committee meeting at 7:03. And as a reminder, we need to roll call vote, is the one difference on the remote meeting. So I will call your name and you say yes or no. So Dave Friedman.
Here.
Paula.
Here.
Jeff.
Here.
Mike DeMeo.
Here.
And Scott.
Here.
And myself, yes. The next meeting agenda item is discussion and approval of the meeting minutes. So is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Motion to approve as presented.
Second, all those in
Second.
favor? Jeff,
I am in favor, yes. Aye.
Paula,
Yes.
Dave,
I wasn't here, so I won't vote.
okay, Mike. Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, Scott?
I know, that's a bummer. Yes.
And myself, yes. So the next agenda item on our agenda is to update and discussion of aquaculture pilot program. So I can give a brief update for the group since I know that it's been a while since we've met. We have the select board had met a while back, and they've directed us to look into aquaculture. So basically in other locations. So basically, just to bring everyone up to speed, depending, I'm not sure who's here in the history of this. The town approved aquaculture, a pilot program around 2 years ago. And then there was a lawsuit that was brought against the town and the applicants. So the applicants that applied for it. Recently, and then the Shellfish Advisory Committee as an advisory committee was not involved in any of the legal proceedings. Recently, the applications were returned to the applicants, and the group that was suing the applicants dropped the lawsuit. And then the select board made a decision to ask the Shellfish Advisory Committee to move forward and look at options in undisputed waters, so beyond the mean low water, and asked us to look at it as a group. So that's what we have to, we're charged with looking at it in uncontested waters. The select board also made it clear that they are going to continue to press forward on the deed research that was delayed due to COVID on the flats. So the disputed area that they have made a commitment to move forward and continue to look into that deed research and resolve that. So for us, the next steps are to basically do what we did before in a more modified timeline, since we don't have to start from scratch on the regulations. So we would have to look at the sites, at the environment of, the areas that we would possibly consider, relook at the application process, and then probably look through any of the regulations that would be impacted by those two things. So if we decided to do something on advise the select board on the applications that we may have to switch the regulations somehow. So are there any questions from the committee to start on our charge moving forward?
Susan, I just have a question.
Sure.
Clearly, there's no timeline on when the deed research might be resolved. Is that right?
I do not know. Yeah, there is no timeline. I know they're pushing forward on it, and that there's a lot of the restrictions for doing the research earlier was based on COVID. So they will press forward, and I will continue to ask about it, but I do not have a timeline.
Okay. And one more thing regarding the uncontested waters, that has to be a subset of the currently approved for aquaculture Scituate waters, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So I think we're going to be severe, I don't remember the conversations 3 or 4 years ago exactly, but I believe, and the other people that are in the room might be able to remind us of, there are very few already approved areas in Scituate. Just want to say that.
Yep. And Mike, I don't know if you wanted to say anything to that.
So with that, Jeff, I talked to Susan the other day a little bit after our discussion with Jeff Kennedy, and rather than to limit people that wanted to still oyster aquaculture, maybe we could reduce the plots to a half acre or a quarter or 3/4 of an acre, move out to the mean low water, because title search is based on mean low water, I believe. So that would push it out a little further. We just got to be careful that we're not impacting on eelgrass, which is coming up pretty soon. But that was some options that maybe small, shrink the plots to about 3/4 of an acre or maybe a half acre. That way we can at least do something out there.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, that's stuff we would kind of think through once we get sites. Yeah. Size. Whatnot. Okay. So in, okay, sorry, that was just Adam saying he's sorry. He's going to be late. He will be here. So to move forward, we invited CSCR to present on some of the research that they've done in that area. I don't know if you all remember, but back pre-COVID, we worked with CSCR on a SEF grant. So they submitted a grant. Susan can tell you a little bit about that. And they were awarded a grant to do some project-based learning, engagement, community education, based on some of the work that they do on the area out there. So whether it's eelgrass or some of the other coastal studies that they do. So I do want to say one thing about the Cohasset Center for Student Coastal Research. They do a great job, and I've had the pleasure of being out there with some of their students. They're an amazing organization that really engages middle school and high school students in science and project-based learning. And they're out there snorkeling and throwing stuff off boats, figuring out what's going on out there. So it's a pleasure to have them here, Susan, with her students to present to us. So Susan, do you want to take it from there, or Max, or whoever's presenting?
Sure, I'll just turn it over to Max Fernald, who's one of our students, and I'll just be there to back him up if there's anything else that we neglected or questions. But he's one of the ones who's been doing the work out there this year. So let me just go to my job of sharing the screen, and Max can unmute himself and tell you about our slides here.
Okay, and I just want to say 712, thank you. Adam is in attendance now, so we have the full committee. So thank you, Max.
Okay, and then do you see my screen? So it should say CSER 2021 eelgrass findings.
Yes.
Go ahead, Max.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for inviting us to this meeting. It is an honor to be presenting. This is the CSER 2021 eelgrass findings presented on December 14th, 2021. Thank you. I'm Max Fernald. I do CSER research. CSER is the Center for Student Coastal Research. We engage in civic studies of the ecosystem, and especially aquatic sciences, which allows us to learn about it and especially help our own ecosystem a lot. Eelgrass is a very important plant. It's known as Zoster marina, and it's a soft, wavy, submerged aquatic vegetation, SAV, and it works to improve water quality, help protect us against storms. It's good for fish, ardent arthropods, and even prevents climate change. Some of the roles in the ecosystem is that it traps sediment, converts CO2 to oxygen through photosynthesis, stores carbons, provides habitats, improves water quality, absorbs greenhouse gases, mitigates ocean acidification, absorbs wave action, and is a nursery for fish. It is especially important that it mitigates ocean acidification, as that has a major impact on the shellfish quality. Eelgrass survives below the low tide line where there is enough sunlight. To get you orientated on this next slide, this is a map of the Cohasset Harbor. Down there is the breakwater. The beach there is Bassing's Beach. There is the glades up on the right-hand side, and behind that is Minot's Beach. This is on the next slide. This is what it looks like zoomed in on low tide. Note that the green vegetation shown in the water is potential eelgrass, but we haven't been able to confirm or deny that. This is a quick video about techniques that one of the other students here, Owen Gertz, put together.
Another tool we use regularly is this. What's the name? Yeah. For the expeditions in CSER, they vary quite a bit, but we try to use some consistent tools that collect consistent data. The first one we use is an app called Survey123, which has a multitude of questions to help us capture information about eelgrass and then places it on a GPS coordinate, so then we can show it on a map. It's probably the most useful tool we have because it allows us to present our data. Tools we have are these quadrats, which capture a consistent image of the eelgrass in a square. This allows us to accurately measure it and say the percentage of density in the eelgrass bed. Another tool we use is the hose stick. We use it to look into the ocean with a GoPro attached to the end. It allows us to look under the waves if a human can't swim, and allows us to record footage, which we can analyze back at the base. For the expeditions in CSER, they vary.
Some other things we do for research is that we walk the tide line at dead low, which can mark it and show where the eelgrass may be. We also weighted the western shallow edge to define it for you after your curiosity for it, which was not so easy, which we will describe later. This next slide is all the data or everywhere we've looked at for data. Note that the pale yellow is less than 1% eelgrass, and the greener the dots, that means the higher density eelgrass we have found. On the next slide, that is all our mapped presence from 2018 to 2020. We'd like to note that your official source for eelgrass data is Mass DEP, who does flyovers to mark eelgrass presence. The next Mass DEP flyover is scheduled for May/June 2022. On this slide, it is on the next slide. It is their first flyover in 1995. And I would like to note that the Mass DEP flyover eelgrass mapping project applies remote sensing using aerial imagery to map the extent of eelgrass beds along the Massachusetts coastline. As we go through the maps, they are just the varying through the time as it goes further. The next slide is all the data points that we've mapped where there is eelgrass. And it is put on top of the blue patch that represents the DEP data. As you see, it matches up pretty well. On this slide, it is all the map presence where we found eelgrass in 2021. The green dots represent presence, and the lines track where we are tracking the tide line at dead low tide. There was some curiosity about the shallow eastern and southern edges of the bed, which we haven't studied much due to fear of running aground. This summer in 2021, we brainstormed ways to explore that particular area. We waited trying to put eelgrass plants on one side of us and no plants on the other using GPS trackers. This video shows this.
If something is more than 2 feet apart from the next closest shoot, then we're going to count that as an outlier. So just kind of going a straight line. It's going to be a little difficult to get acquainted. So we're going to go almost all the way into shore, then come out to where make sure we have the farthest out shoreline edge of the eelgrass to track.
All right.
That's it.
And always facing the same direction so you don't get turned around. It's very hard. It's very easy to just get turned around. The eelgrass, it's just this. You have no bearing of direction.
We are en position.
Hopefully my neck won't be hitting you.
I'm sitting down. Hey, the shot's the front. We already do. We have.
And if that camera doesn't seem to be working. Yes. Yeah, but right, so do we? And then you guys have the CSR phone, right, Noah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to get ready for my schematic work.
So
This film was also put together by Owen Gertz, the other student of CSER here. On the next slide, this was the end result. This is our track, and as you can see, it was quite chaotic as it was hard to track the eelgrass, but we did make a good attempt. To orientate you, the rock in the northern edge of the map is Hog Rock, and we tried to explore the shallow edge. We may try again next summer with improved techniques. On our second iteration, here are some of the Canway Pinger tracks we made in round 2. Me and a fellow student, Nikolai's first endeavor is shown in the brown, and low tide is walked in blue. We also tried wading straight out pinging plants that we encountered. Solo colonizing plants are shown in this next map. Solo colonizing plants are a plant that have apparently sprung up by seeds that were isolated from other plants. We find them interesting because they are either an unsuccessful outlier or the first to colonize a new area. They are more likely to be seen by us wading and snorkeling than by flyovers. The pink dots represent where we have found the soil colonizing plants. In the changes we have noticed, it is represented by this next map. This map is by Beck, a former CCR researcher who's estimated the change in density using code. It showed the change in density from 2016 data to 2020 data. The green shaded area increases in eelgrass presence compared to 2020, and the red shaded area represents a decrease in eelgrass data percentage from or density compared to 2020. So why eelgrass is important? Eelgrass is estimated to be valued $6,100 per square hectare based on its value for carbon and nitrogen absorption. This is according to the Enviroeconomic Swedish Consultancy and the Swedish Department of Marine Sciences. According to Smithsonian's Oceans, the world seagrass meadows, including eelgrass, are estimated to capture 83 million metric tons of carbon each year. 48 is the percentage of global eelgrass decline that has been lost since 1980, according to frontier.org. There are many threats to eelgrass, as it can decline to sunlight deficiency, fouling organisms, the pathogenic wasting disease, human activities such as anchoring and mooring, predation from invasive species, temperature change, pollution, and many other causes. This is the end of the slideshow. We welcome your continued interest and any questions you may have.
Nice job.
Yeah, great job, Max. Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? And then I can open it up to others to raise their hand. Dave?
I'm good.
Oh, I thought you were, sorry, I
No,
thought you were
that was
motioning
great.
to ask a
I
question.
really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Adam, do you have a question?
I have a question. I'd just like to congratulate the CSCR students for a well-done presentation and excellent field work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, Susan, you're an advisor, a teacher. What is your position?
Yeah, I call myself the ecology coach
Okay.
because I do like to put the research in the hands of the students, and then I drive the boat for them and help them focus and offer them a place to meet and advise as needed.
You should be proud. They did a great job.
I am proud. I am proud. Yeah, you can hire them now if you'd like.
Yeah, they did a great job. Thank you, everyone. Let me open it up. Are there other questions? Or does anyone have a question from the larger audience? If you can raise your hand, and we'll be able to unmute you. No questions, huh?
I can add one thing that may be of interest. I know there are a couple of dots that you may have seen on the far eastern shore in weird places. And one of them was one that you'd asked me about before.
Oh, right, I did, yeah.
Why is there one? Well, there's one that like one dot was on the land. Well, that was that was a mistake,
Yeah.
obviously. So not everything's perfect. But another one we went back and checked on because we thought it was weird. And it turns out there were eelgrass plants there. And the place that we found them that was isolated from everything else was in what I've been calling gardens. There's little pockets of water behind the ledges. And for some reason, those seem to have greater diversity of kind of everything we've seen in those little pockets. And we haven't seen any live scallops, which people often ask us about for eelgrass. We haven't seen any live scallops. Maybe I don't know what to look for, but we really haven't seen anything that looks like it could be a scallop. But we did find some dead scallop shells in those garden pools behind the ledges. And then there's actually an ecological term, refugia, which describes an area that's better protected from environmental threats than others that can be sort of a refuge of biodiversity. So I feel like those areas right behind the ledges are a refugia, and they're kind of ecologically interesting. So we'll keep an eye on those as we go forward.
Oh, interesting. Is that behind the rock too, right?
Like the ledges.
Yeah.
Solid
Okay.
as opposed to rocks, pebbles, and that kind of, yeah, behind the ledges that are solid granite.
Cool. Adam, do you have another question?
Yeah, I'm sorry for for being late. Maybe you already addressed this. Did you see any native? You saw the evidence of scallop populations there. Did you see any native oysters or any other shellfish?
So in 2021, we didn't go out looking for shellfish as much as we had the previous year. So the previous year we did more of a intentional hunt for shellfish. But this year in our wanderings, we did not find a single Eastern oyster. We did find lots of oysters that are the European variety.
Right.
So the only ones that we found that were native Eastern oysters were at the bottom of the boat ramp in Cohasset Inner Harbor. Could have been his lunch, I don't know.
I don't know, man. Maybe it was lunch, right? A spat on a shell. So I guess to put this in context and to remind folks about the aquaculture and the state approvals. So as the town and the state goes through an approval process for aquaculture, the state biologists at DMF would come out to survey the area toward the end of the process. But generally towns or whoever is applying for aquaculture would do kind of these kind of preliminary surveys just to see what's out there. So the state biologist has the final say on what's out there, and they look for eelgrass, and they also look for other shellfish, whether it's other native species. So soft clam, hard clam, quahog, those types of things. And I have kept DMF in the loop that the students have done a lot of research out there, and they're excited to use that and to work with you also to inform their research too.
Excellent. Thanks.
So again, thank you so much for this. It's great work, and I would love to see you continue.
Thank you. And
discussions with us.
It's always great for us to have real projects and people who really care about our data. And walk around with people who are actually doing this kind of thing for a living. So definitely include us in your wanderings around out there. And we also I enjoy curious questions from the students, as that's sort of the kernel that propels science. And we certainly welcome curious questions from stakeholders as well. So stay in touch, feel free to contact us.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. All right. So as far as discussing like what next steps on aquaculture, does a committee have additional questions or thoughts on that? And Adam, I'm sorry you missed a little bit of the beginning, but as a reminder, we're tasked with moving forward to look at aquaculture in undisputed areas, which would be outside the mean low. So some of the area that was actually presented, and then other areas within Scituate, to propose another pilot program. However, the select board is still looking into the deed and of the flats, and will continue to do that work with hopeful results in the future. Dave?
Susan, I would just say again, and we'd have to defer, I'm not sure if Mike heard me, DeMayo last time, but between Mike and Stephen Moan, they could probably guide us initially to the areas that are already approved. And then, if we have to refer back to the selectmen to say, this is an area we'd like to propose our pilot project, it's a subset of those areas that are pre-approved, right, Mike?
Yeah, also you can't grow oysters on top of eelgrass. You don't want to impact that, but then that's why it was discussed that rather than limit the amount of growers, maybe the plots get reduced to a half acre or 3/4 of an acre, or we kind of stagger people out a little further. So we're below the mean low water, but not impacting the eelgrass. So it's going to take another time to go back out there and probably remap it or regrid it, so we're not in the impact areas. Because if we are, marine fisheries will flag that anyway. So if we can do our own due diligence of making sure that we're in the right areas, it's going to be much quicker and much seamless for us.
But again, the process, you're thinking of the same area, just further out, clearly past the
Yep.
claimed area of the Cohasset.
And then that would avoid some of the tidal fights and things like that with the mean low water. So in the mean low water, if we're out a little further, then it should not be that much of an issue. I'm not the attorney, but that way we can move forward gradually to some kind of a resolve. And that way, because we already kind of picked the 7 growers, but if we shrink the areas a little bit, potentially, then no one's being outcasted or pushed aside with not getting an area. So beyond that, I'm not sure what else we could do, but.
But again, Susan, back to your question. We were tasked with exploring undisputed areas.
Right.
Is this area, Mike, the only currently approved area for shellfishing in Scituate waters? Okay, so that answers that question.
Not for, well, for this type of activity, yes, you couldn't do it on the front beaches. Wouldn't work, not this fashion. But yeah, this only truly approved area currently that is in Scituate. The front beaches are open for cohots and things like that, but you're not going to do oyster aquaculture in the beaches. The rivers are next fight, but this is the only area. And we fought hard to keep this portion of the area open because they wanted to come closer. And that was a fight we talked about previously with Jack Rock and the edge of the Cohasset jetty coming out of the harbor and pushing it over a little further, which would have encroached on Strawberry Point. But if you look at the current maps, it goes from the jetty, which is inside the harbor or breakwater in Cohasset, which is technically Scituate waters. It goes right towards number 5 Jack Rock and beyond. Anything to the left is I think MB10, and that's closed, or MB11. But the MB10 area, which is Briggs Harbor, is truly approved year round.
So to start with, Susan, I would say that we would have to get a drawing, maybe not an engineered surveyed map of the areas that could be used that are undisputed. And then what Mike's saying is you can't encroach on any of these other areas. Is it 100 acres? Is it 5 acres? How much area? Then we could look at what we would suggest to the selectmen, like Mike's saying, maybe it's the same number of growers, smaller plot size. Maybe it's just a reduced number of pilot growers. I would say we need a map.
Yeah, so I would agree with you. And I also would say that we would request this, a survey. So we would request the town administrator do a survey, because the only real contest would be what is the mean low? And we should have a professional survey do it. And then we've got the CSCR data to figure out what's the in between. And I think we've all been out there at low tide. I've spent quite a bit of time out there at low tide. There's some area in between where the eelgrass and where the low tide is. And then we would have to, and Mike, I think you've got a good point, like how many could fit and what size. And I also think there's another issue, right? So there were the applicants, the original applicants. I don't know that they're all interested. I haven't, the only interaction I've had, official interaction of Shellfish Advisory, was to notify them that the meeting was happening tonight, which I thought was, appropriate given the fact that they are applicants. So we don't know if all of them are interested. We don't know if all of them are. We don't know if it changes business plans or whatnot. So there are some questions on that as well, that we may want to address, or somehow come up with questions that we could email them and gather the answers.
And Susan, to Dave's point on the mapping and some of our preliminary work and mapping, probably included the areas that we're now considering, but we have a good idea, Dave, what those areas are. We just weren't concentrating on them in our earlier efforts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and you want to request a survey of
Yes.
specifically what you're asking, not like the fact that we we're doing something else and we happen to have that as included.
Right. Then also too, guys, is before we did the mapping, we used the squares, the postage stamps, which were true squares of, I think, 212 by 212, which gives you the square acre, but that may be changed to like rectangles too. That way everybody's kind of fishing in the same type areas, because you can't have one guy well above the high tide mark and one guy like 2 hours from low tide, because it doesn't really benefit him to work his
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So if it was spaced out further, everybody's getting equal amount of time with the equal amount of tide into their farm area. Then there was also concerns raised about the unmarked channel that went into the back of Egypt Beach. So by reducing the squares and making them rectangle could help probably lessen the impact of potential boats area. So, but those are things we got to look at. But the main thing is getting the survey and either using triangle, squares, or rectangles, so everybody has equal time to work their gear in that area. And I think there's more than enough area outside of the Eelgrass area to at least get the 7 plots. And keep in mind too, I talked about this numerous times, that the town should have at least a half-acre plot for science and research, and that would benefit Cohasset students as well. So I don't want to lose focus of that.
Yeah, I don't want to lose focus of that, Mike, either. Thank you for mentioning that. Because I think we've, as demonstrated at this meeting, the research component is super important.
There's just a few hands raised, Susan.
Yeah, are there any other questions of the committee? And then I can open it up for questions, because I am interested to hear what people think about this. No? Okay, let's open up for public. And the first hand that I'm going to go by the first hand that I saw, which was Brad White. And then Dave was the second one I saw, Dave Sinkowski. So, oh, and then Jamie's number 3. Okay. Can you speak now?
Yes, hi, good evening. Thanks for having the meeting. It's been a long time. I wonder if you could recap for me what happened, because we were really in the trenches with this. There were plots that were agreed to be licensed to 16 people, I think. Cohasset sues Scituate. Cohasset withdraws the suit. I don't know for what reason. And are they still pushing Scituate residents around on Scituate land, I guess is my question. So now we're going below a mean water line, which might make sense, but are we giving up?
So wasn't involved in the lawsuit, and I can't speak to that. But I can say, first of all, there weren't like 16. It was less applicants, but I have been assured that they are not giving up, that the select board is moving forward on the deed research and continuing to move forward on that, on the Scituate land in question. So I have been assured, even as most recently, I think it was yesterday, by select board members, that they are continuing to press on that. But recognizing that there's delays, they want to look at other areas too, because there are areas right outside the mean low, and I believe, and that's uncontested. So the thought is to look at those areas and put some aquaculture in there, and then, when it's resolved, there could be a potential for more areas to open up.
Actually, Susan, if I can just make a correction, I think the title search was to mean low in the lawsuit stuff, but I think we're actually talking about mean low water, which is further out. So I think I might have had that backwards 5 minutes ago. Mean low.
Okay.
In case somebody else caught that, that's
Okay. Is Dave Sinkowski, do you want to?
Yeah, just a quick question or comment. First, to your point, I think you're exactly right, but we should all understand why the Board of Selectmen cannot, in a legal situation, advertise their position. So we have to respect that, and thank you for sharing what you did, Susan. I only had a comment. Could you share the slides that the young people were sharing earlier? Sorry.
Yes, we will post them on our website. So the Shellfish Advisory Committee, we started posting documents on our website. So if you go to the website, that it'll be posted this evening or tomorrow morning based on and it'll be available. Similar to the DMF, the presentation that DMF did at one of our meetings is also posted there too. And then Jamie.
Yes, good to see everybody. Well done, Susan and Max and Beck and Owen. That was great. That was really, really well done. To Brad's point, as far as what I've seen, you know, being one of the people being sued in that lawsuit, so I was privy to some of the information that was passed back and forth. They haven't been able to get as far back in the deed research as they'd like to, because they haven't been able to locate the ancient deeds that go all the way back to the 1600s. However, in discovery, about a year ago, November of last year, they both lawyers showed their expert discovery, and they got back to about 1805. And as far back as 1805, I personally saw no evidence that there was any riparian rights associated with any of the surrounding deeds. All of the language spoke to along the high water mark, along the beach. There was no below the watermark, save for the April 2020 deed that was recorded when Friends of Basking Beach purchased 2 1-acre parcels that would project over where we intended to put the farms. And there was a sentence that was added to the deed, I believe, you know, feloniously or whatever, if that's a good word to describe it. I hope that that's looked at, but yeah, there was I didn't see any riparian rights. So I think our chances are still good. Once the town can uncover that, those ancient deeds, that will prove that it's in the public trust and up for us to be able to design a pilot program for. But that's just my opinion. Again, I also wanted to speak to the number of applicants was 9 for the original pilot program. And if I recall correctly, back when Tony was the chair of the BOS, he didn't say he definitely wanted 7 farms out there. He said that, he wanted the Shellfish Advisory Committee to draw up a plan that would include 5 to 7 farms, keeping in mind that being smaller would probably be better than larger with respect to the surrounding access and resources and impact. So I'm not sure if I would assume that they're going to want to put 7, 8, 9 farmers out there, and that we need to pare down the acreage to 1/2 or 3/4. I understand if it needs to happen, and if it does, so be it. But from a farmer's perspective, especially below the water line, if you're on land, you can deal with smaller farms, but if you're in the water, you typically need to have larger farms. So I would hope that we would be able to find some way to have 1-acre parcels below the mean low tide line. Now, when Sue and I initially walked that mean low tide mark unofficially, but using some of the resources, thanks to Susan of CSCR, I think I can't remember who it was that helped us. Was it Beck? Susan? I think Beck came out and helped us.
And Noah McDowell.
And Noah McDowell,
yeah.
okay. And when we walked that area and then took those data points and kind of came up with an estimate, if I recall, there were between 10 and 15 acres that were below the mean low tide line in ankle to waist deep water that stayed roughly 25 to 30 feet away from any eelgrass. So now you wouldn't have perfect rectangles, probably. It might look like little blobs, which might be difficult, but I was confident that we could get at least 10 acres. And so that would give you the ability to have 5 to 7 farmers out there with 1 acre each, and have buffers in between, like the DMF usually likes you to have. So I don't know if that's changed with Susan, with your more thoroughly scientific study, whether your data points match up with what we had. I guess that's something.
We'll have to get Nikolai on that, I think, because Noah McDowell pulled together low tide lines last year for the state of the harbor. And then Nikolai, who's a senior this year, walked some more of them, as did Owen and Max, who are on the call. Well, that's what we're doing next time, guys.
Yeah, marrying those two, marrying the mean low tide line, and then the edge of the eelgrass, and then lassoing an area to find out how much acreage there is out there that could be utilized.
Yep. I mean, we could get an official survey of the mean low, and I think we'd come very similar, Jamie, to that.
But I like Mike's idea of making it fair and having each farmer have equal access to the same amount of tide, because it is a pain in the ass when you're the guy who doesn't have who has like the crappiest farm out there.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good
now.
Feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Jamie. So Mike here. So like I said, we're going to do all we can to give people the equal fair share. The 3/4 of the half-acre plot was just an idea by looking at it. That way we're not pigeonholed and we have nothing out there. But also, you know where you rank on the with the selectmen. You're one of the good farmers, but would that impact you at all, shrinking you to 3/4 for a pilot program just to initially start? Like, what would your feedback be if you were offered like a smaller farm just to get going? Is that something you would still pursue, or, I mean?
I wouldn't pass anything up. I mean, feeling as positive and as I do about the former lawsuit, I do feel like eventually we're going to end up in the tidal area, in which case this is, I don't know if I'd call it a placeholder, because I think that having a portion of one's farm in the water all the time is very beneficial. It might even allow you not to have to take your farm off for the year. Like I'm in the middle of doing actually myself. That's why I was a little late to the meeting, because this week we're taking our farm off for the year so that it's not, doesn't fall victim to the winter, the harsh winter. So, if we were fortunate enough to eventually win, to uncover the deeds back to the 1600s and find that it is in the public trust, then I wouldn't say I would want to like switch to the tidal area. I would say I'd rather be able to expand backward into the tidal area. So a half acre, I mean, anything would help. I mean, especially in the first year, if you're putting 500,000 oyster seed or 1 million oyster seed in the water, it's going to be a very, very small footprint, and a half acre would be plenty. But if it takes time and 2 years from now, we're still not in the tidal area, then that's when it gets kind of hairy.
Yeah, and those are a lot of things that we discussed over the previous 24 months with, this area is not ideal for the occasional oysterman. This is the area that you really got to know what you're doing out there, because the logistics of all of this are, as you know, are very tough. I know the Cohasset boat ramp, I'll say publicly, the Cohasset boat ramp did get a lot of state money and 2 seaport economic grants. So that boat ramp, as far as I'm concerned in my research, is open to all residents. So just saying that, I will publicly disclose that I do sit on the Port Professionals Board for the Seaport Economic Council. I do review all the seaport grants, and I know that they were received money for that boat ramp for repairs, where that status is at. But that whole fight with Cohasset of not utilizing the ramp by non-residents, I think, in my opinion, holds no water. And I look to people to challenge that, because I don't think so. I think it bodes well for what we're trying to do in our own waters in Scituate.
So Mike, what's the definition of a non-resident?
Someone who doesn't live in the current town. But if you look at the Seaport Economic Council money, Brad, that's all state funds. So basically, you cannot limit funding or resources to residents if you accept the state monies.
Massachusetts residents, right?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
I don't know how the chapter and section in front of me, but I mean, it kind of makes sense that if you're accepting state tax dollars, how can you take state tax dollars and not allow people to use your resources? Same thing with CPC funds, you know, it's the same thing. It's open to all. How it gets managed is probably a different story, but I want to make that perfectly known.
Okay. So I think we have a couple next steps with requesting a survey. And then probably after that, we could overlay some of the stuff that was presented tonight. Should we ask or formally ask the 9 applicants of their interest?
Susan, let me throw one more possible
Okay, David.
wrench in this process. The selectmen actually returned, there were 9 applicants. A lot of people went through a lot of work to put forward these applications. We went through a good amount of work reviewing them, ranking them and all that. Even though we knew 2 years ago or so, whenever those applications were submitted, that those 9 were interested and we ranked them, the fact that the selectmen have returned their money and returned their, I think they returned their money too, and returned the applications, we need some advice, maybe legal advice. Do we have to start at square one again? In other words, this whole process that we opened up, advertised, and went through the review process might need to be reviewed again. Clearly, we ranked them, and if it's just a matter of pushing them out a half acre further or however further out into the deeper water, that'd be great. Easiest for us. You know, we already ranked the applicants. It'd be great. But you know what I'm getting at here?
No, this belongs to the selectmen.
What's that, David?
This belongs to the selectmen, not this committee to make that decision.
No, I agree. We need to ask for advice, though. You know, if we suggest that,
No,
all right, top 5
I don't
people.
think it's proper time to have this question. I think they should speak first.
When you say they, you mean the select board should speak first?
Yeah, yes, the select board. Yes.
Okay.
They are technically the ones that issue the permits. We just did the
Right. We just
Correct.
need advice. If we, you know, why recommend somebody if
work,
it's
but I
not
mean,
legit?
but I
Why
did
waste more time than has already been wasted?
Okay. So really all we need to do is figure out what's available and then push it to them to, push it to them to interact with the applicants. Because they did specifically ask to see, that was one of the asks from the select board, see if who's interested.
Right. So
Of
Susan,
And that's that. I'm sorry, that's different than what I was not aware of this.
Okay. So, and I apologize, some folks came late. So the select board returned the applicants and then charged the Shellfish Advisory Committee with figuring out if there's undisputed area and also gauging interest in the undisputed area, right? Because an undisputed area changes obviously it changes the depth, right? And maybe your plan doesn't work out, or you don't want to do aquaculture in deeper water. I don't know. Or it could change what or your situations could change. So I think they also would like to know like what the interest level is out there. Not that we would make a decision, just like gather information.
And also, unless everyone is here that of the 9, I'm not sure that's a fair discussion point either.
Well, Dave, I was saying like the committee could say, okay, we could email the applications and applicants and say, these are the questions. Are you interested? Please respond by, and give them, I don't know, 2 weeks to respond. And then we meet in 2 weeks and look at their responses. So I hear you, Dave, because I agree. We sent an email notifying the applicants that we were having a meeting, but maybe they couldn't make it.
Couple are here.
Yeah, I think 1, 2, 3.
Wait, if I can make my opinion, Susan, I think those folks that did the legwork for their own businesses over 18 months ago and did the legwork when they were asked to do it and submit it on time, I don't think they should be pushed into another role again of being competing against other applicants. I think they should be in the first pool, if you will, and then the second pool. If there's a couple in that first 9 that decided to drop out, and then that 9 drops to 7, then that's the tier 1 or pool number 1, my opinion here. And then any other applicants coming forward would be in a tier 2 or second pool status. But I don't think it's fair to those original 9 applicants to go through the whole process again to potentially compete with 50 people versus the 9 that did. I think that's fair. That's my opinion.
Agreed.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question?
Sure, Craig.
I think that we need to know what the area is going to be before we decide. So I think you need to map it out, and then you come back to us.
Okay. That's fair.
Okay. Good feedback. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
good. It's good feedback. But Mike, what you said, I do tend to agree with you. I agree with you as well on your statement.
I don't think it has to go to a vote, but that's just my 2 cents and my heart feelings that, I mean, I've seen the legwork that went into this and the original people that been to all the meetings, pretty much helped out with the regulations. We're there through thick and thin for the past almost 2 years now. I don't think it's fair to have them go through that whole process with potentially 50 people after the dust settles, especially being part of a lawsuit. I don't think it's fair to them. Just my 2 cents. If I have to write a personal letter to the selectmen with my opinion as the constable, then I'll gladly do that, but that's pretty much end of discussion on that.
Okay. Oh, Jamie, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's regarding the survey. So I understand that we're going to need to have a survey done for this specific area from the mean low tide and beyond. But with regards to an overall survey, where do we stand with the survey that was asked for with regards to the case? I mean, I guess maybe if the case has been dismissed, then that order would maybe no longer be valid. But a year ago, the town of Scituate was supposed to hire a surveyor to survey that area. Do we know where that stands, or if it's still happening? And
that's a good question. We can, I mean, I think the issue is we would have to put, if they have a survey, we'd have to expand it, right? If you're just looking at where the lawsuit was, I think it's a little bit, you'd want to expand it. But yeah, we can, I mean, I think we should request that the surveyor put the, somehow get the CSCR data of eelgrass on the survey where the mean low would be. So I think we've got to kind of compile things. And I think that any other survey had other, was not as far out, and it was looking at the land and not in the right area. So I think we should probably have a specific ask of the survey to compile the two. To make it clean. I mean, I don't think there should be many different maps.
You just add plaids, like grids.
Yeah. Susan, did you have a question or something to add?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you have a sense, Mike, how much the topography changes from year to year out there?
I'm sure there's a lot better experts here, but I don't think the topography changes that much, and that can be captured too with LiDAR and with going out there and doing surveys. I don't think there's any hydrographic surveys to that area. I think for the most part, there's no shoal areas that I have seen over the years. I don't think much has changed, so I think it's what you see is what you get. I'm sure the eelgrass kind of comes and goes and grows and dies off, but if we can kind of avoid that, then I think it's our best interest.
So Susan, is that something that you would be able to do, or should we request a survey to put your data on top of survey that we would.
I mean, we can do what we can do. We can't do it with an engineered stamp on it.
Yeah, so that was my thought, is that we get an engineered stamped
Yeah.
survey of mean low. Check on that and then overlay your work
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
that.
Certainly, we could, yeah, and then we could give you an idea of the tide lines that we've walked, and what we try to do is walk them on a 0.0 tide, but then it's,
Yep.
you know, it's us walking them with Canway pingers, which, as Max said, aren't entirely accurate. They're pretty good, I mean, generally. And then the other issue is just that, you know, a little 1 inch of vertical change ends up being quite a good distance of horizontal change when it's so flat on the flats.
Right. Yep. Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add? Because that's a pretty clear next step on that. No? Is there anything else we should be considering?
I don't think so.
Okay. Oh, Jamie, did you have something?
Yeah, pressuring the DMF and the FDA to get on the computer model, because none of this will be possible until they actually, you know, deem that the sewage treatment outfall will not adversely affect an aquaculture program.
Yep. That's a good point, Jamie. And we do have an update on the recreational side, the next agenda item. But as Jamie noted, the DMF started like the last process in this whole aquaculture application. The last process is that DMF certifies, right? So they wouldn't certify this area until the hydrographic studies were done. However, and Mike will explain this later, I'm sure, all the tests have been very good too. We continue to get good tests. Brad, yep.
You asked what else we could do. My strong recommendation for 2022 is to publish a quarterly meeting with a date and stick to it, whether we have information or not, because there are 24 people on this call. There are 200 stakeholders across both towns. And I think that it's important so people can put together their thoughts and keep the momentum. And I know we haven't had that. So that'd be my request, that we have regularly scheduled meetings on the quarter.
Yeah, I'd actually like to meet more than quarterly. And we were kind of caught up on the lawsuit, and we were in a difficult situation where we don't have the answers. We're an advisory committee and we're not involved in it. So it was just a difficult situation. So I would agree, Brad, and I think we should actually meet more regularly too, because I would hope that we would be able to get some of this survey work done quickly, such that we can meet again. To then the next step is figuring out, put a map up, figure out who's interested. So hopefully that would be inviting the applicants to attend too.
Susan, can I just ask for a clarification? Jamie, you were talking about testing. Are you talking about testing that was done at Bassing's Beach or over in the North River?
Both.
Both, yeah.
Okay, so the sewer treatment plant in Cohasset is an issue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Well, it's a very small plant, but it's involved and it will be tested as well.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, the test that Susan was talking about was the fecal coliform that the state test on a basis. That Cohasset has been tested all summer. We're actually testing the rivers this Thursday at 10 a.m.
Okay.
Okay.
We're gonna move on to the recreational stuff, Susan. I think that's why.
Yeah, let's move on to that, because Mike has an update on that.
So I know there's a lot of angst with the rivers being closed still. The previous meeting we talked about the SMAS, the UMass Boston, the contract with Marine Fisheries, with UMass Dartmouth, and the funds that came from that were pushed hard by Senator O'Connor and State Rep Kearney. Those are the two folks that really pushed hard to allocate the $100,000 to DMF to allow UMass Dartmouth SMAS to get this studies done. So I'm just going to go over some bullet points from Jeff Kennedy. He was invited to this meeting tonight. Myself and Susan did talk to him this week. He gave us some bullet points and some updates of where we're at, and he'll continually do that for us. I don't think he personally has to be on the call to be personally attacked, but this is from the horse's mouth, and I will say the communications has been good. It doesn't come back regularly every single day, but Jeff has been forthwith of where they're at. So I will read some bullet points to you of where we're at. So this is some regard for the Division of Marine Fisheries received an earmark in FY22 from the for SMAS, UMass Dartmouth, to conduct hydrodynamic modeling of coastal water up to 12 wastewater treatment outflow plants to accuracy assess dispersion and dilution of wastewater treatment plant effluent and other potential contaminants to inform delineation of shellfish growing area, classification, and other applications to improve management of marine fisheries resources. Okay, I'll stop there. Just so everybody knows, Scituate Marshfield is number one. We were picked first. So they're looking at the test 12 wastewater treatment plants in Massachusetts, a couple North Shore, a couple South Shore, and I believe Cohasset would be probably number 2 on this list. Okay, so they are doing what they said they were going to do. And I said before, government has one speed and sometimes it's not fast, but you do get more honeydew vinegar, and they're on it. They started November 1st. So that study for the rivers is underway, which is good. Okay. So UMass Dartmouth SMAS team will add high resolution grids for an appropriate locations in the Northeast Coastal Ocean Forecast System. The system is called NECOFS, which utilizes the FBCOM, a lot of jargon here, FBCOM model. A DMF SMAS contract called an ISA, which I don't know what that stands for, is in place with work begun on the high resolution grids November 1st, what I just said. So they're basically taking the high resolution grid down to a 10-meter grid, which is usually 300 meters. So they're reducing it down to a 10-meter grid. So this is necessary so that we can get an accurate depiction of effluent dilution and dispersion, effluent transport, impact, and expected deposition within such a small channel and shallow estuary, which would be the 2 rivers and the Herring River. DMF will provide initial data including flow rates, contaminant concentrations, and dilution thresholds. All wastewater treatment plants discharged to active shellfish areas require a dilution analysis. DMF has prioritized Scituate wastewater treatment plant model run over all other treatment plants in the state. Okay, so, and I think Cohasset will follow suit after that. Okay. Creating this new high resolution grid is labor intensive, requiring hundreds of hours of dedicated work. DMF anticipates model results for Scituate this winter. I didn't stutter, this winter, with our own analysis soon thereafter. So myself and Susan spoke with Jeff this week. So once this portion is done, they're also going to do some kind of study. I think I talked about before, was actually using like oranges or apples and dropping them in the water to see where the tidal flow goes, to see if it does meet the mouth of the river, to see if it does go on the South River, which I don't think it does. And there was previous emails where I asked Marine Fisheries to please open the South River now, because I don't believe that any affluent or tidal current goes into the South River. The North River is a stronger current than the South River. However, there's still a lot of water coming out of the South River, which goes right down to 139 in Marshfield. It's a lot of water. So that was discussed this week. I thought that went over pretty well with him. It probably still hinges upon what happens with these models, but I'm hoping potentially we get some kind of break on some kind of opening before all this is all said and done. So that's what I'm kind of hoping on. It's not a barter to close the North River to open the South River. It's to give us something currently. There's 313 acres of open area that used to be in the South River, which is a heck of a lot of area that we can currently dig at now. So That's what I have. That's from Jeff Kennedy. This is what he gave us. It's from the horse's mouth. And I appreciate Jeff and commend Jeff for doing that. It's been some lag time with state agencies, but it is moving forward. He said November 1st. He stated it started November 1st. So that's kind of where we're at. So he said by this winter. So that's only 3 more months. So we'll see what we have. 4 more months. I'm sure there'll be questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Clarifying questions, anything? Okay. Brad?
Michael, good report. Thank you. And 2 questions for you. Have you done any dilution testing on the side to determine if they have a dog in the fight? That's question 1. Question 2 is, I understand over the last several years that you have had really good testing results for contaminants. And then question 3 is, if the South River is ever open, will there be public access to that area? Or is there public access to that area? Thanks.
Yeah. So Brad, the testing that we're doing this Thursday is for fecal coliform. Those are the typical samples that we do for the water quality in the rivers. That North South River Watershed does the same kind of testing, but it's not approved by DMF because it's not their lab. I will tell you, all the water samples for that process have come back still very clean. Still very clean. The sewer plant's a different animal, but at least they're still testing the rivers. They're required to do 5 runs a year. So it's not like they prohibited the area. It's currently closed, which is a little better than being prohibited because they've been harder to reopen. So Marine Fisheries is not looking to do the dive study just yet. They want to see what this comes back as. And that's why the next thing, which I volunteered all of our boats to help out with this kind of study of actually dropping in small fruits into the river to see where it actually ends up at. Like, is all that water coming out of the Herring River, is it making it towards the mouth of the river? Is it all flushing? Is anything going down the South River, which I don't really think it is. I think everything comes out of there, goes right out the mouth. So, I mean, there's even parts by Damus Point that I don't see on the outgoing tide how water could be going down the South River, down the North River towards Damus Point. I don't see that either. But that's where that model study will kind of show that. And I think that's really what they want to see. Unfortunately, this is where we're at. I'm happy that they're finally doing it. You know, it could have been done last year, I thought, but just, you know, I'm one person, Susan's one person, and they've been in constant contact with us, and it's going. So.
Well, my understanding was it was a different test they were doing. They were doing something for neurovirus that we don't know anything about. And your testing has been great, consistent, and quite accurate. Are they testing for the same thing you are? Or are they testing for some neurovirus they don't know about?
No, they're testing stuff that comes out of the top of my head. All the tests that we do, Brad, we go out with Marine Fisheries. They're all Marine Fisheries tests. They use their lab, and that's for fecal coliform. Right. The Scituate Shellfish is totally different. That they feel it's not pushed out in time. And we talked about this numerous times that the sewer plant uses ultraviolet testing now. It has a capacity of 1.6. They felt before with 1.3. 300 extra gallons is a lot of water that the plant could hold. Basically, the Scituate sewer plant could operate for a 24-hour hold if something catastrophe fails. And this is something we also talked about. They said, hey, if the plant failure, we could clear that river within 2 hours, and people, with the aid of the cameras that we have in the river, you can have people go to the Herring River boat ramp. You can alert the shellfish that are out there. The people that go out there typically go to the same area, and they're pretty easy to see in kayaks, canoes, small boats. So I think if the sewer treatment plant had a catastrophe, we would be there within another 2 hours before anyone would be exposed to any contaminants of shellfish. But that's just me. Let's just let this test go and see what happens.
Thanks, Mike.
I mean, Susan, any more questions?
Are there any more? There's still.
Yep.
It's Jeff Gordon. May I?
There's a hand raised. Yeah, Jeff.
Thank you. My understanding, thank you, Mike. This was great. My understanding, though, is that these dilution studies are intended for untreated sewage as opposed to fully treated sewage. Did Jeff Kennedy talk about that at all? I mean, I'm kind of surprised that it's a dilution study because, again, dilution studies are for untreated, and we got a treatment plant that's doing a pretty good job. Do you know? Did he speak to that at all?
Did not.
Okay.
But I'll add all these bullet points to the meeting minutes. I mean, I'll give you everything that I have. Wait to the meeting minutes. So.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. I guess that's all I got.
Okay. But if he's saying the flow rates and contaminant concentrations and all those things by what he's saying Scituate for this winter, well, let's see what happens. I mean, that's not far off. This is a closer we've been to some kind of results, which doesn't bode well for this season. But let's see what comes back. Do.
Mike, what's the estimated turnaround time for that test? Do we have any idea?
They said DMF anticipates model but this winter.
Yeah, Jeff Kennedy also said at the meeting in June, he said that they would begin the study this summer, meaning, basically July or August. So you said the study has actually, it began on November 1st. So they're actually out there, they're testing the water now, or they're establishing this grid network?
I haven't seen them out there, but I know the work has begun on the high resolution grids November 1st. So they're reducing 100 meters to 10 meters.
Okay, cool, great. Thank you.
Of my pay scale too, but I've been in constant contact with Jeff, and like I said, he's a busy man, doesn't get back to you on a daily basis, but at least timing enough to give us his updates, to provide updates to the public and this advisory committee. Then Susan, while we're here, I know we talked about at the last meeting, the Scituate Selectmen voted a letter to Dan McKieran, the director, and then some of the members had asked the Board of Selectmen of Scituate to endorse the letter, and I believe I scanned those both to you, so those documents can be shared on the Scituate website. So
yep, they're up there.
Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Clarity, that way everybody's seeing stuff that's not there. I guess for anybody in the public that feels they're not getting information or transparency, please email me at Scituate or Marshfield, and we'll make sure you're getting everything that we have. So for those of you who ever wanted to come do a water sample run with marine fisheries enough, I would welcome that, as long as you have the proper PPE. And then I would have no problem bringing you out on the boat so you could ask questions of the marine fishery staff of what's going on, and that's fine. I think it's something good for learning. Susan Cohasset, I would welcome that to your students as well. I think it's something for them to learn as well. And they also test Cohasset, so maybe we can get a partnership with CSCR to do the sampling of Cohasset this summer. That would help, especially with small boats.
Great. Sounds like a plan.
Pretty good internship for somebody.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank
In
you.
the summer. The winter might be rough. Paula, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a question. The fact that, can everybody hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The fact that we haven't been able to dig clams out there for a period of time, and they're, I guess the term, they're being choked out there. There's just such an overabundance of the clams. Can that create contamination as well? The fact that are they dying out there? And is that a situation itself with contaminating the water?
There's a couple of things with soft so there's a disease called neopalagia, but the reason why you're seeing them choked out in the videos and pictures, that's been happening for quite a bit in certain areas. There's a lot of shells that you see behind buoy number 13 in the North River. Yeah, it's best to dig them.
Right.
But yeah, they do choke out and die. And yeah, when they die, they do have a pretty good smell to them, but
Yes.
it is, it's a shame that we can't go dig them, trust me. If we
Right.
could be out there tomorrow, but it's, yeah, they are getting choked out. They are.
Yeah.
But if and when we get this place back open again, there are funds to reseed areas and things like that. There's a lot of things, once it does open, hopefully, that we can go out and do some reseeding. We could also do some grid mapping areas, rolling closer areas, so one area is open versus another area to repopulate those areas. So there's a lot that can be done. Unfortunately, it's kind of sad now that we have to look at that.
True. Thank you.
Mike, one last
Sorry,
thing.
one more question.
Mike, I've got a courtesy request for 200 clammers. Any way we can get an extension on our 2020 or 2021 paid-in licenses they haven't been able to use, like they just did for marine fisheries?
I guess we could ask the board, but I do have the shellfish permits for both communities for 2022. They're ready to go.
Say that again.
I said I do have the permits printed for both communities for 2022. As far as if you have an extension of the permit, that would be a question I can certainly ask them if the committee wishes to endorse your request, Brad. But that's not a question. That would be selected in both communities. So essentially, you'd be asking for a free permit for everyone for 2022. Currently, now the only free permits for shell fishing are veterans and folks over 65 years old.
65.
I would say, Mike, just for the people that bought the permit, not everybody. So I think last time I looked, when I bought mine back in November, December, I'm sorry, last quarter, with wishful thinking that I might reopen. I think there were 38 sold in Scituate. I'm not sure how many in Marshfield you'd know. But, you know, we're giving it the old college try, and it'd be really nice if the town or the state could give back to the people that have been hanging in here. There's 22 people on this call that really care. So, you know, it'd be kind of a nice holiday gift. Thanks.
Susan, Jeff had a question.
Yeah,
Hey, Jeff?
if I may just, can I ask?
Yep.
Thank you. I guess this is just sort of a position thing of the committee. And my question is, if the state were to, grant regulation of the recreational shellfish harvesting to municipalities, and if the towns could be adequately protected from, God forbid somebody gets sick, but if the town could be, and its officials could be protected from that, is it the position of the committee to accept that, again, if the responsibility were handed down? I had asked this question once earlier, and there seemed to be some reluctance, but I'm getting a sense that maybe it would be okay for Mike and the town of Scituate to be the primary regulator of this. Again, if the state granted it, and if you could get adequate protection, is that? Can
It's
you
a
tell me
good
your position?
question, but there's a lot of ifs in there. My response, I don't think the state's gonna grant that. So to me, it seems like something that would not happen. Mike,
So you
what
won't publicly
What are
state
your
a
thoughts
position?
on that?
Jeff, the state still oversees the sampling of the water quality, so they still have to approve the sampling. The town could not do that on their own. The state is regulated to test the waters, not us. So I don't see that would even be possible. But I remember you did ask that question before.
And you're not going to answer it again, or it's a no, right? Is that?
It's not my decision.
Yeah.
So it's a no. Okay.
I think that would be a question for the state rep and the state senator.
Yeah, and the select board too, and the town. If they would want to take the liability of it. Again, that's what I keep saying, there's a lot of ifs. If the state were to grant that, and every correspondence I've seen, they're very clear that they're not going to. And then if you could figure out how to mitigate the liability, again, something that doesn't seem, it just seems a lot far away from what we can do. But and not our decision either, so it would be up to the town administrator and the select board. So are there other questions?
That's all I have, Susan.
Okay. That's all I had too. We have some clear next steps and try to get something on the books for early January to discuss if we can get a stamped survey by early January and overlay some of the CSCR work. And then invite the applicants. Are there any other next steps? Did I summarize that? Do we have to vote on that? I guess we do, right?
I was gonna mention that. Yeah, you ought to list them again, then those vote.
Next meeting date as well.
Is that, I'm sorry, what's that?
The next meeting date.
The next meeting date, that's a good question. At the next meeting date, I will see when, after this call, I'll see when we have availability. So early January, first week or two of January. To goal before then is to get a stamped survey and try to overlay the CSCR data and then have a conversation with the applicants at the meeting to with the map. Is everybody in favor with that path forward?
So first we have to formally request the survey from the selectmen, correct?
Yep. No, from the town. I think it's just through the town administrator. I will figure out who it is. So request a stamp survey from the appropriate person to use.
And we're gonna write a letter to the selectmen, so we should vote on all three things I think that you mentioned, right?
Well, what would we have to, I think we need a little more work to do before we send to the select board, right? Because we would need to know, then we would, you would have the plots and then you would need to know if this is even interest, or you'd have the areas. Is that correct?
So it's just one thing. We need to request the survey from the selectmen, period. That's it.
Yep.
That's what we have to vote on now, just to
Yep.
send that request.
And then we overlay it with the CSCR data. And then have another meeting. Okay, is all in favor of that approach?
Aye.
Paula,
Aye.
or did someone
Aye.
wanna, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Who wants to, I guess I made the.
So
motion.
moved.
So
Second.
moved.
Second.
Who's a
I second.
second? Paula, all those in favor, Paula,
Aye.
I, Jeff,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Mike. And myself, I, and Dave
Aye.
and Scott.
Aye.
Awesome. Okay. And if nothing else, a motion to adjourn,
So
Second.
moved at 8:31.
8:31. Second.
To the board.
Okay, Paula,
Aye. Is that, yes.
Jeff,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Mike, Scott.
Aye.
Okay, and Dave, did I get you, Dave?
Aye.
Okay, and myself, I. All right. Until early January, I will check on availability and send around a couple dates.
All right.
All
Have a
right.
nice
Thanks,
holiday.
Susan.
Okay, have a nice holiday, everybody.
Happy
Christmas.
holidays, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.